إلى يوم الدين وعلينا معهم وفيهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. To proceed, alhamdulillah, we're continuing this lesson in the beginning of guidance by Al-Imam Abu Hamid Hujjatul Islam Al-Ghazali. And alhamdulillah, we've had about 6 lessons, and we are in the section of obedience. Al-Imam Al-Ghazali teaching us how to organize our time from morning until night in order to observe ourselves in our obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are in about the 3rd span of that day of obedience. And he has reached the point where he is discussing the works that one should occupy, that a worshiper should occupy his or herself with during the daytime from sunrise until dhuhr. In the last lesson, what did he say is the best way to spend that time from duha until dhuhr? For those who were present, what did he say? To gain beneficial knowledge. Correct. So that's the best way to occupy your time, in beneficial knowledge. And inshallah, we asked Allah as an objective of the last lesson that we be able to sit in dhikr from Fajr until sunrise and pray 2 rakas and find the benefit of that. And hopefully, and I saw a number of you, we did that with Habib Hussein over the last couple of days. And that's beneficial. That's how one acts upon knowledge, take it, apply it, and then through gradual, you could say, attempts and continuous growth, one gradually improves one's worship. And I hope that some of you who did that, maybe you felt really tired while you were doing that, struggling against your lower self to sit and remember Allah for like an hour, and then listen, or half hour remembering Allah, another half hour or so listening to someone teach, and you find your nafs is hollering, your back hurts, knees. But I would anticipate and hope that some of you found as soon as you pray 2 rakas, you find like a burst of energy. You find what's called an inshirah, an expansion of your breast. And they say that's one of the benefits of that work, right? And specifically a great scholar named As-Suhrawardi, Al-Arif As-Suhrawardi, is the author of a great book, Awarif al-Ma'arif. He said that person who worships from Fajr till sunrise will find like an inshirah, an opening, an expansion, a burst. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to grant us to act on our knowledge. We asked Allah and made an objective from that lesson that the students be able to answer the question, how did the author explain beneficial knowledge? Right? How did the author explain beneficial knowledge? And it's somewhat long, but what's the beginning of that answer? Allahu Akbar. And you know where to find it in the book? All right, that's right. Page 52. So he said useful knowledge or beneficial knowledge is that which increases you in taqwallah. It increases you in being God conscious, right? And that's how we began that. And it's on page 52. We asked everybody to note it down, right? That's excellent. A definition, an explanation of what knowledge is truly useful and beneficial from Imam Al-Ghazali. And inshallah, that's a takeaway for all of us. Then what remains is for us to work on pursuing that. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that in lutf and afiyah. So then we're going to continue reading. For those that are just attending with us for this session, we're reading through Beginning of Guidance by Imam Al-Ghazali. And the students are reading through the text with a little bit of commentary and review to remind ourselves and work on these great deeds from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and his Sharia. So you're on number 2, worship, on page 54.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ورضي الله عنكم. Worship. If you are unable to acquire useful knowledge, but spend your time engaged in the duties of worship, such as remembrance of Allah, recitation of the Quran, glorification, and extra prayers, this is among the stations of the worshippers and the ways of the righteous. And by this method, you will also be of the successful ones.
Allahu Akbar. So he said, as a second method of using that time, and that is to engage in worship, right? To spend our time engaged in duties of service, acts of ibadah, dhikr of Allah, recitation of the Quran. It says glorification, meaning tasbih, and that's oftentimes used as general types of dhikr, performance of extra voluntary prayers, salawat, for example, duha, and then beyond duha. And this is a station, right? This is a station of the righteous, and those that attain it and is accepted are from the triumphant and the hereafter. And many of the pious would organize their time during the day with a lot of worship, and some would combine those various things. So, for example, Imam al-Haddad, rahimahullah, as a youth studying Quran, which would place him under 15. He would perform 100 or 200 rakas in the Masajid of Tarim, returning from Quran school. One of the great scholars of al-Baghdad and scholars of Tasawwuf, Junaid bin Muhammad, who they call Sayyid al-Ta'ifa, the foremost of the group of the scholars of spirituality in Baghdad, he was a merchant. So he worked, but then he also had worship, right, and knowledge. He would enter his store and like lower a curtain, like you imagine in like a bazaar or something, not necessarily its own building, but like a stall, lower the curtain and pray maybe 400 rakas, right? Voluntary rakas. Rabi al-Adawiyah from the ladies, great knower of Allah and worshiper, it was her weird 1,000 rakas in the day and night. I know aunties, right? And this is not uncommon among Muslim populations and certainly not uncommon in the Muslim world. Maintain a household, take care of a family, raise children, cook beautiful meals. This one auntie, her food would heal you. I remember I had a sinus infection. She cooked me this food and cleared it right up. But they have like 3 juz of Quran they read every day. Tahajjud every day. There's a lady, again, someone you wouldn't regard her as like a dedicated worshiper, certainly not a seeker of knowledge. She was actually a midwife that delivered the child of one of my friends. And he mentioned, so a midwife might be busy all night delivering a child. So then the end of the night came and it was almost Fajr, and she got so upset and worried that she had missed Witr before Fajr came in. Like we might get upset if we were going to miss prayer, a prescribed prayer, or miss work, or miss some appointment. Point being that one organized some of one's time in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there are people that are for that, right? There are people that's their preoccupation during most of their time. Though someone who's able to engage, as mentioned, in knowledge, that is a better occupation than worship. And generally, those things that benefit others have a greater reward than what's limited to oneself. Fadda.
Good works. The third possible way is to spend your time in working on something that will bring benefit to Muslims, and by which you will bring happiness to the hearts of the believers, or by which you make it easier for the righteous to accomplish good works. For example, serving the jurists, the true Sufis, or the men of religion, taking care of their errands, and striving to bring food to the poor and the needy, making a habit of visiting the sick, and escorting funerals. All these are superior to voluntary acts because they are forms of worship and they involve kindness to Muslims.
Allahu Akbar. So he said third, and these aren't necessarily in order of importance, because his last sentence would indicate that the one who did number 3 would actually have more reward than the one that did number 2 solely, right? Though a lot are going to combine that. Like, for example, Junaid, we mentioned what he did. He combined that with teaching and knowledge. He combined that with fatwa. He would have combined that with giving charity and so on, right? And the Prophet ﷺ, he's the primary example in all of these. and you'll find he has a portion of all of these works. But he said he translates this as good works. One might also translate that literally in Arabic. It's isal al khair, being a source that brings good to the society one's in, right? So then he gives examples. Some of these examples are somewhat specific to his environment, and then some of them are quite general and definitely would apply in our environment. So he said these are things like bringing one occupying oneself with bringing good to all Muslims, right? Just this person is just totally altruistic, right? They're spending their day in altruistic activities, bringing good to the Muslims. And he's in an environment that's a Muslim society. You could also say nafa' lil khalq, bringing benefit to the creation. So that implies to beyond the Muslims, of non-Muslims, and also beyond humanity, even other types of creation, right? Like animals. The Prophet ﷺ said, in every living creature, there's a reward, right? Being charitable and good to every living creature has a reward. So just bringing good. One of those works is bringing happiness to the hearts, right? That in and of itself is a good work, right? Not just feeding someone, for example, necessary food, but beyond those essentials, the work of just making people happy, right? Bringing happiness to the hearts of the believers. That applies to believers in general, and there's also special reward for making children happy, right? And some of the Salihin, some of the pious, the righteous, they would can make that among their deeds. Helping facilitate the worship and the goodness of the pious. And there are people in Muslim society that essentially that is their role, right? They're facilitators for the pious. He said, like serving jurists, serving people of tasawwuf, right? That are true in their path, people of the religion, and essentially, he said, La ilaha illallah, taking care of their errands, right? So that is a segment of the Muslim population, and we find that some of the greats from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, that was how they became great. So, for example, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. What was Abu Bakr involved in during the life of the Prophet ﷺ? Facilitating the Prophet ﷺ's life and mission. And his facilitation was to the extent that the Prophet ﷺ said, I'm not as indebted to anyone as I am to Sayyidina Abu Bakr. But then, while he's engaged in that, he's acquiring states to the extent that he was the most suited to be the caliph after the passing of the Prophet ﷺ. And we've talked a lot. This applies to men and women. It's as though young men need a little bit more kind of a coach or disciplinary figure, mentor, to get them up to speed in this. But so in the Fatuwa halakas, we'll talk about this a lot, right? This is the job of the fityan, right? They're just taking care of people, taking care of the society they're in. And the fityan of the Prophet ﷺ, they became the scholars of the generation after his passing. So you have Ibn Mas'ud. What was Ibn Mas'ud known for? Ibn Mas'ud, one of the young Sahaba, he carried the Prophet ﷺ's shoes. He carried his water for purification. He carried his siwak. And he was constantly entering the homes of the Prophet ﷺ in service, right? They need me to carry this for them, deliver this, take that out, clean this up, whatever. Just constantly in the houses of the Prophet. He was in their houses so much, someone who recently arrived to Medina might think he was from the family of the Prophet ﷺ, right? And then who did Ibn Mas'ud become? Ibn Mas'ud became one of the greatest theologians of the generation after, right? He's one of the Sahaba that's known for exegesis of the Quran, tafsir of Quran. Anas bin Malik, same. Anas bin Malik, what is he known as? The Khadim of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And again, becomes one of the imams of the next generation. Ibn Abbas, similarly, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, right? Wives engaged in, the duties of a wife and the service of a wife. to their husband, and then how many of them are the narrators that narrated hadith to abundant quantities, right? Sayyidatuna Aisha being one of the foremost of them, radiyallahu anha. Aisha, in her service and time with the Prophet ﷺ, taking care of his affairs, she mentioned and she boasted or mentioned as a mention of Allah's favor, that even to the time of death, she was facilitating for him and taking care of him, that she moistened his siwak for him to use it right before he died. So her saliva touched his right before he died, and she became what Ibn Hajar mentions, a quarter of the Sharia in its rulings and adab are transmitted from Sayyidatuna Aisha. She also became one of the 7 who gave fatwa after his death, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She also was knowledgeable in medicine because of what she learned in his presence. She was knowledgeable of the Arabic idiom, meaning like a linguistic scholar. She was knowledgeable of their poetry and so on. So one who's engaged in these types of service benefits immensely. And many of the greats, that was the beginning of their affair. There was a scholar, his name was Habib Alawi bin Shihab, and he was the last leader that was obeyed by all of the Sada al-Balawi. And when his teacher saw that he had a particular light, what did they do? They took him out of class and they put him in the responsibility. They gave him the task of making coffee for the gathering. Why? Because they saw his light. So then his fellow students, his peers, started to tease him, and they said that, there's no benefit from Alawi. We're studying, we're in class, writing down these questions, what have you. He's just making coffee for us. And he overheard them, and that hurt his feelings. So the next day he came to class, and tried to sit there and do the class with the other students. So his sheikh saw what was going on, and then asked him, what happened, and he said they were making fun of me. He said, one day you're going to be the sheikh of all of them. And indeed, he became the sheikh of the town, and really all of their whole tradition from Southeast Asia to East Africa at that time. So there's a whole lot in this, taking care of other people. And if Allah makes us someone through whom He facilitates the needs of His creation, that's something we should really, really thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, especially the pious. He also said, feeding the needy and the poor, a great work, visiting the sick, helping people with their funerals. And, as I'm saying this, you could probably think of people in your local community that they're just known for that. There's one uncle, I'm not going to mention his name, let him, remain a work between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We had to bury Brother Tariq last week. I think it was last Saturday, right? And I'm like, man, and there's details that I don't know. I don't do that all the time. So I'm like, I hope, and I know Uncle's busy. And then he messaged me, oh yeah, I'll be there. And I said, I'm glad you're coming because I really wanted your support, but I didn't want to trouble you, right? But there's just those people like that. They always make it their business. If somebody's buried, they're going to be right there helping that person, bathing them, transporting them, helping at the funeral, making sure they're buried properly, making sure they're rolled over on their right side before it's lowered in the grave. And that's a great deed, right? That's a great deed. And then he mentioned, aunties too. There's aunties we know in the community. They'll call us, so-and-so's in hospice, come make dua for them. So-and-so group of elders are at home sick in their house. Come, can you make dua for them? Or they have this need or that need. That is a great work. And he mentioned that all of these are superior to, and he says voluntary acts. That means extra voluntary acts of worship. That's where he's translating. That's his implication and connotation, right? Those voluntary, that service that we do that benefits more than just us, surpasses our own voluntary acts of worship, and because they involve kindness, and you could also say support. Rifq, irfaq can have the implication of kindness, but it can also have the implication of support, right? And may Allah grant us, and specifically to the young people and the seekers of knowledge and people who have an aspiration in the spiritual path, Like this, after our basic iman and yaqeen and heart attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is like number one in your deeds. Service, khidmah. And some of them, Ibn Ajib in some of his works puts it as a condition of an aspirant, husnul khidmah, right? All of us should see ourselves as public servants, as servers of the community. And also, incidentally, that's leadership. If we want to, to be graduated into positions of responsibility in the community, those that are suitable for those positions of responsibility are those that engage in these types of activities. It's not just, sitting at the head of the conference table or having your name on a list of board members or being the person on the minbar. Really, it's those that do these things. And may Allah grant us to do that. So that's an excellent way to occupy your time, right? And the person who does this will find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates their affairs. Allah is in the own of al-abd, madam al-abd fi awni akhihi. Allah supports and assists a slave as long as that slave is assisting his or her brother.
4. Earning a living and protecting your religion. The fourth state is that, lacking the strength for these things, you occupy yourself with your own needs, earning a living to take care of yourself and your family. You do this in such a way that Muslims are safe from your tongue and your hand, and your religion is safe, because you would not be committing sins. In this way, you will reach the levels of the people of the right, even if you cannot be of those who will rise to the level of the forerunners.
Allahu Akbar. So then he's saying the fourth is just earning a livelihood, earning a living, and protecting your religion, right? There's not a lot of extra, not extra worship, seeking knowledge, public service, but one is earning a lawful livelihood and protecting your religion, right? Meaning what? That if we're not protecting our religion, or we're not giving any additional public service, at minimum, if we're not engaged in extra and meritorious voluntary works, at minimum, we should be protecting our deen, right? At minimum, we shouldn't fall below that level. And he said, so just support oneself, which itself is a good deed. Support your dependents, which is an obligation and a jihad for the one engaged in that. And the Muslims are safe, not receiving any harm from you, and they're safe from your tongue. And through that, your religion will be safe. And this sounds like a no-brainer, right? Like this, and people might say, this is just no problem. Why is he even mentioning this? But if we're honest, that's not a lot of people's state, right? A lot of folks, if we're not, or even those that are occupied in extra worship, or what would appear to be extra worship, if we don't have an active aspiration, and this book is for someone with an aspiration for our hereafter, it's not unlikely that we will unleash our tongues and, God forbid, maybe our hands and other things, and we'll be causing somebody harm, be in somebody's business, violating someone's reputation, damaging someone's honor. And he's saying the person that is a minimum that none of us should allow ourselves to fall below, right? And if he's saying that's the case, this is even more the case for the three activities ahead that preceded it, right? Like, what's the point of seeking knowledge and then you're throwing away good deeds by biting people's back all the time? But what's the point of being engaged in worship and you're giving away the reward of that worship by violating other people, speaking ill to them, cheating them, damaging their honor, and so on. And similarly, the third, right? And he said, if we're able to do that, just live a normal, mundane life while fulfilling our obligations and not harming anyone with our tongues, that a person would be from the people of the right hand with that, right? What does he mean by the people of the right hand? In the Quran, Allah refers to as-sabiqeen al-awwalin al-muqarrabin, right, in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, and then ashabul yamin. Ashabul yamin are those who come through the day of resurrection and they're safe and they go to paradise. They may not be from the people of the highest ranks, but they've fulfilled their obligations and not violated others, such that they are people that enter paradise without punishment. And he's saying that is that's a bare minimum. We shouldn't allow ourselves to fall below. Where what? We're neglecting obligations and we're hurting people, right? We're hurting people, speaking ill of them, and so on. Backbiting, carrying tales between people. We should not allow ourselves to fall to that level. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us.
And this, i.e., the level of the people of the right, is the lowest of the levels of religion, for below it are the grazing grounds of devils, which you would enter as a result of working. May Allah protect us, and that which ruins your religion, or by hurting one of the slaves of Allah. This is the level of those who are destroyed, so beware of being at this level.
Allahu Akbar, right? So he's saying, if we're hurting people, we're below the levels of the righteous, and we're among the levels of the wicked and devils. And we shouldn't allow ourselves to fall to that level. And at the end of the book, and that's going to be like maybe next semester, hopefully, or a subsequent semester, he's going to deal with avoiding disobedience. Excellent to read ahead to that. One of the areas he's going to tell us to avoid disobeying Allah is with our tongues. So essentially he's saying, don't be that person, right? He's running around hurting people with their tongue, or worse, with their hand or monetarily. If we do that, we're along with the demons, right? We're not with Allah's servants. We're with the wicked and the devils, and we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that.
Know that a servant is at one of three levels in terms of his religion. The safe one. This is one who suffices with doing the basic obligatory acts and does not commit sins. The one who profits. This is the one who voluntarily performs good deeds and voluntary acts. The loser. This is the one who falls short in his performance of the obligatory acts. Therefore, if you cannot be of the profiting ones, then at least put your effort into being among the safe, and beware of being among the losers.
Allahu Akbar. So, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. So he's mentioning three levels, right? Someone who's safe, that they fulfill their obligations and they don't commit sins. And that's that person is salih. What is the definition of a salih? Al-qa'im bihaqqillah wa haqqil ibad. They fulfill Allah's rights over them and the rights of Allah's servants over them. And La ilaha illallah, that's a tall order, right? That's a tall order among people, especially in these latter days. That's a person salih, that person's from the heart of the right. Ashab al-Yamin, honestly, in this time, they're probably from the Muqarrabin, or many of them are from the Muqarrabin. The second is the one who profits, right? So the first, he's saying the person's safe, they break even, right? Nothing extra for them and nothing against them. They fulfill their obligations and don't violate Allah's limits and Allah's servants. The one who profits, that means the person fulfills their obligations and then goes beyond that with extra good deeds, of like the three types that were talked about before. And he referenced this in the very beginning of the section on obedience. Someone who fulfills Allah's obligations and does extra works, seeking nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the loser falls short of obligatory acts and violates Allah's limits. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. It said, if you can't be from the ones who are profiting, at least don't be lower than the ones that are safe, and really beware of falling short, right? Coming up short is a big fall on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And if I could just like keep it real locally, like we're, and if I could even speak to, some of our Muslim young people or those that, born in the Muslim community, we are falling short now. as a community. I'm just talking about local, real talk. The amount of us that are smoking weed and fornicating is way too much. We're normalizing disobedience of Allah. People, just turn around, just show up, no problem, baby mama. No problem smoking weed. Smoking weed as if it's drinking coffee. Everybody's smoking weed. That's falling short, and that is not the trust that we've been given. We visited Imam Abdullah Al-Amin today. Habib made amazing du'as for him and his service. Habib Hussein remembered him. He hosted our Sheikh Habib Omar. He hosted Habib Hussein as well, hosted me, visited Dr. Sherrill, visited Imam Khalil, visited Imam Luqman, visited Imam Salim. We walked away from one of the graves, and there's a spirituality in Muslim graveyards, and they can be quite tranquil. And Habib Hussein has visited many of those. Right, he grew up in in Saudi, in the Hijaz. So visiting in Medina isn't unusual. Sayyidatina Khadija in Mecca and others. And he came away from one of these elders, who I'm not going to mention who specifically, and he said, "That's not a grave, that's a garden we just left." Right? They've done a lot of service in the city, man. If I just keep it real, did the pioneers serve like this here for us? Islam reach us. Some of them lost their lives, like Imam Luqman. For us to just, it's just A-okay, I got a girlfriend. As if that's supposed to be normal. I'm showing up with a girlfriend. I'm just Friday night smoking weed like anybody else. That's falling short, y'all. We're caught slipping if that's what we're doing, and it's dangerous. It's a big fall to slip in, right? The Yom Qiyamah is coming, right? And that's for real. So we want to spend our time profiting with Allah, minimum, not falling short, right? Not falling short, but not allow ourselves to fall to that level. And if one doesn't know how to get out of a situation like that, a door of repentance is always open. Find someone who isn't in those things and keep their company. That's how you get out of it. Change the people you're with and hang around people who you want to become like, right? Even if that means moving. One might have to go somewhere else. One might have to change company. One might have to change activities, but we shouldn't allow ourselves to keep falling short. And specifically, and I'm reminded of this by visiting graves, when fornication becomes open among a people, death will be prevalent among them, and poverty, right? So we're grieving, and every time we turn around, we're burying another person, sometimes young people. If dating is normalized, and by that I mean sex out of wedlock, that's exactly what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said would happen, right? So let's not be caught slipping. Let's work at profiting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And being safe, at minimum, being safe from potential punishment, but not allowing ourselves to fall to those things. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that. Not always easy. I understand that. I got plenty of things I'm working on that aren't easy. The best thing I've found to help myself with that is spend time with others that have the virtues I'm trying to acquire and are free from the vices I'm trying to get rid of. Company is one of the very best things, and may Allah grant us to cooperate and help one another and be very embracing and help anyone that wants to make a way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is one of the best works, and may Allah grant us that. Tfaddal.
Therefore, if you cannot be of one of the profiting ones, then at least put your effort into being among the safe, and beware of being among the losers. In terms of his relationship with his fellows, a servant is at one of three levels. The highest, that he act with them as the reverent and noble angels do. This is by striving to help with their needs out of kindness to them, and by bringing happiness to their hearts.
So he says his relationship with his fellows. I would have liked him to say with all other servants of Allah, right? So he says, the slave with respect to all other slaves of Allah is of 3 degrees. The initial implication is other people, right? We're all Allah's servants. but also that implication can be extended to broader than that, to definitely animals, other living creatures, and really with some of the pious, it can even be extended to inanimate objects. So the first group, this highest group, we should be towards others like angels. What are angels? Angels are constantly helping, right? We just had a rainstorm. Angels brought rain. Angels bring wind. Angels bring sustenance. An angel brought your soul to your body when it was in your mother's womb. Angel Jibril alayhi salam brought us revelation, right? They're workers in service to Allah, and much of that work is in helping the rest of the creation. So he said that is how we should be with respect to others, right? Like an angel who's always helping others. And may Allah grant us that. That's the highest. Faddal.
The middle, that he be with them as an animal or an inanimate object would be. He may not bring them good, but he does not do them harm either.
Not for them or against them, right? Like a rock. You got a rock in front of your door, or a cat, right? It's not hurt, it's not causing any harm, not bringing any benefit, right? That's middle level. Minding its own business.
The lowest, that he be with them as a scorpion, serpent, or wild beast would be. No one hopes for good for him. No one hopes for good from him, and evil is feared from him.
That's Allah al-afiyah. And it comes in hadith that a funeral procession came by, and the Prophet ﷺ said, either at rest or people are receiving rest by being rid of him, right? And obviously we don't want to be that latter part, right? We don't want to be a source of harm so that when we die, people are glad we're gone, because what we were a difficulty for them. May Allah protect us from that.
Ameen. Therefore, if you cannot reach the horizon of the angels, then beware of following below the level of the animals and inanimate objects down to the level of scorpions and snakes. If you are content for yourself to come down from the highest of levels, do not accept for yourself to be hurled down to the lowest of the low. For hopefully you will be saved by doing just enough, neither achieving much or losing all.
So again, he just did it. He's an extremely rational thinker, and so he's just doing categorizations, highest, middle, lowest, and in each case he's just said, if you can't aspire to high, don't let yourself fall below the middle, but certainly don't fall to the low, right? And may Allah grant us protection from that, and grant us to love the highest of the high, because a person will be with those who we love. Who they love. And La ilaha illallah, Allah gives an indication of that. Some of us might read this and feel kind of intimidated, right? And some may feel, I couldn't imagine being of the highest. Two things that will help there. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, actually I'll mention the second of them because it's in the Quran first. Allah said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa kunu ma'as sadiqin. O you who believe, be conscious of Allah, be mindful of Allah. And Allah didn't say be of the true, right? He said be with the true. So one doesn't make a claim, and one might see that high station as something that, one would never presume oneself to be among the highest. But Allah ordered us to be with those who are true, with those who are the muqarrabin, with those who are the highest. And a person will take on attributes of those with whom they associate. So the person who, and there's an illusion in this verse that if we want to be among those who are true, if we're with them, we'll become among them. And we hope that from Allah and ask Allah for that. And then the second thing of this meaning, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Al-mar'u ma'a man ahab." A person will be with or is with those who they love. So hopefully none of us would make the claim that I'm of that highest level. I'm like an angel, but we love those that we see like that, right? And that we hear of that are like that. Prophet ﷺ, the companions, the pious, those in our community who's just done decades of service. We wouldn't presume or be so arrogant as to call ourselves of that, but we should love those people, right? And that's a claim that you can always make. Don't make claims other than that, but being a lover, if that is true, and we should aspire to that, the Prophet ﷺ taught us that we'll be with those. So love those who are like angels. And you have others, why is he showing off? You know, who is he to be doing that? Those are haters, right? Prophet ﷺ said, be a learner, or someone who be knowledgeable, be someone who's learning, be someone who's serving, be someone who loves, but don't be the fifth, so you'll be doomed. What is the fifth? A hater. And you got people like that, right? People learning, teaching, serving, building schools, doing all of this, can't occupy any of those stations, can't at least love them. Spend your time detracting from their efforts. Allah protect us from that. So minimum, if you can't be one of those things, help them in what they're doing, at least love them for it, right? And if you love them for it, you'll have a portion of what they have. You'll be and that love, though, is because of a harmony that you have with them. Your heart's harmonious with theirs, so you have a love for them, and that bodes of that's an indication that eventually you'll be with those you love. But just minimum, don't be that hater, right? Their occupation is what? Detracting from what other people are doing, and we seek refuge in Allah from that. Faddal.
Therefore, by the light of your day, you should occupy yourself only with what benefits you in your afterlife, and with gaining those provisions in this life which you cannot dispense with to assist you toward your afterlife.
Allahu Akbar. Read that again.
Therefore, by the light of your day, you should occupy yourself only with what benefits you in your afterlife, and with gaining those provisions in this life with which you cannot dispense with to assist you toward your afterlife.
Allahu Akbar. That's the point of our existence, right? Preparing for the hereafter, or taking care of our worldly affairs that are indispensable for our preparation for our hereafter. That's how to use our lifespan, right? And may Allah grant us that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that. And notice both of those are connected to what? To our hereafter, right? We're either, like salat. Salat's khalas, directly associated with the hereafter. Or, you need a roof to sleep under. You need a bed to sleep in, clothing to wear. You need an alarm clock to get up and pray that fajr. So you got it, you have to have some occupation to facilitate those things you need. But the point of it is it's for the hereafter, right? It's not just limited to the world. The point isn't just amassing a bunch of stuff that's going to end up in a landfill. That's not the point. No, faddal.
Then, if you cannot manage to fulfill the rights of your religion while associating with people, and you cannot remain safe, then solitude is better for you. You should adopt solitude, for in it is safety.
Allahu Akbar. So in his time, that means, Assalamu alaikum. In his time, that means like literally secluding yourself. And a lot of us may not be up to that in this time, though those that are, Allahu Akbar. But what are you saying? Closing the avenues from which harm to your religion comes. And in this time, maybe, nobody's going to go live on a mountaintop. But like, do we really need to have, do we really need to watch 50 TikTok videos in a day? Right? That's like just an open avenue to harm to your religion coming in. And there's a lot of, and that's like a type of seclusion and preventing oneself from harm. Faddal.
If in your solitude devilish insinuations draw you to what is displeasing to Allah, and you cannot root them out with the duties of worship, then you should sleep. That is the best state for you and for us. When we are unable to gain any spoils of battle, we are at least content with safety in defeat. But how sorry is the state of one who can only save his religion by making his life non-functional. After all, sleep is the brother of death. It is to suspend progress in life and join company with inanimate things. Heed this, and you will be divinely guided if Allah so wills.
Allahu Akbar. So what is he saying? He's saying all of this advice you give, how to use time well. If one can't be one's religious safe, try to keep to yourself. When you keep into yourself, that doesn't work. Terrible thoughts come. Waswasa. He said, then how do you say? Just sleep. Just sleep. Go to sleep. But he said, then, that's like, that's a suspension of lifespan. And that's a lowly state. But mentioning what? Disobedience is even worse. Right? He's saying, bare minimum, protect your religion from disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if you just have to sleep, even if you have to go be alone somewhere. We shouldn't allow ourselves to violate Allah's limits and harm Allah's creatures. And in another scholar, Imam Haddad mentioned in a book, Good Manners and 3 Treatises, we should see sin as poison, right? So Imam Ghazali is saying, don't poison yourself, right? Don't poison yourself by violating Allah's limits. Rather than doing that, just go to sleep, right? At least you're not hurting yourself when you sleep. But that's not a good use. That's not a good use of the gift that Allah has given us. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us use our time well. That is the first span of the day from Ad-Duha until Ad-Dhuhr. And may Allah grant us to take well advantage of our time. We'll begin on Sunday on page 58 and 59 with preparing for prayers. So we're going to talk about getting ready for Dhuhr and getting ready for all of the prayers. So from this lesson, we have an objective, and we ask Allah for this, that each of us have a work of the category of number 3, public service. The 3 activities, he mentions it on page 54 in English, good works, right? Each of us find some sort of public service we could do, or service, because some of us, it might not be to the public, it might be to family members. We might have old parents or old family members or sick family members or those with special needs or outside of our own household. Each of us should see it as part of his or her aspiration, and we ask Allah to do that. If you will, you could consider this like service project for the class. Find some sort of public service you could do, right? That helps others, facilitates them in some way. And for the local community, just as an example, an anecdote, recently our brothers tried to organize, every year Al-Ikhlas Training Academy paints the school. We have one of our elders and community members who served for decades, Imam Nader Ahmed, Allah preserve him, serving on one kidney for years and years, part of one kidney, not a whole kidney, part of a kidney. And the brothers tried to organize for a few brothers to go down, and I think it was just a handful. We should all, betake ourselves to tasks like that, to some sort of public service, especially to an effort like that, or an effort like similar to that in your own local community, on your own network. Inshallah ta'ala, that's a learning objective for this lesson, and may Allah grant us that. And then we have about 10 minutes until the Iqamah. I could take a couple questions before we have the Adhan, and then we'll have the Iqamah Basar at 5:15, and then begin the Burda. Yes, sir. Um,
So helping people for the sake of Allah versus helping them for their opinion to become better.
so the question is, how do you protect yourself? I'm going to reiterate it in a slightly different way, but what I'm understanding is that how do you protect yourself from ostentation when doing works of service? The first thing I'll say is beware of waswasa. Like beware of whisperings of shayateen deterring you or causing misgivings about good deeds. That question applies to any good deed that we perform, right? So every single good deed we perform, potentially riyah could enter it, right? So essentially the question is, how do we become sincere? That's a lifelong process. But what we don't do is not start because we're not at the end of the process yet, right? A simple remedy that helps protect from riyah in general is concealing one's works, right? That applies to worship, and that could certainly apply to service. And there are examples of that from many of the Salihin. So if someone is plagued by whisperings of status with people and thoughts of status with people in service, simply conceal your service, right? Zain al-Abidin, Ali bin Hussein, radiyallahu anhuma, he fed like 100 households from Medina by bringing them charity in the night, right? Secret charity is open, secret feeding is open. Many of the good works of service that we could do of this species are not particularly glamorous, and nobody needs to see them. Sometimes I'll come into the bathrooms here at Al-Rahma and I could tell that someone's cleaned them, right? There's plenty of things like that you could do. So just conceal it if you need to. But I would just say, like, when we hear of good deeds, if the first thing we have is like a misgiving, how do I join between this good deed and this bad deed? I think a lot of times that's waswasa, right? Don't give a lot of heed to wasawas. Just quickly undertake good deeds. Ask Allah's help. Undertake it. If you really find your plague, just hide it. Find a way to hide it. And that's a simple answer I would do. Find some sort of good service that you could do that you hide. Yeah. La ilaha illallah. Yes, sir. Khalil.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. You mentioned during the talk about keeping the company of truthful people, and I was wondering, are there some comments about how we can recognize these people?
Allahu Akbar. So the question is, if we're trying to keep the company of the true, how do we recognize them? Through knowledge, right? Through knowledge. A good indication would be those that learn and apply learning. And then as-sadiqeen, the first, the explicit indication of that, and the most basic indication of that is they speak honestly. Like you would say those who are honest, right? That's when people lie, it's very obvious. So don't not keep the company of liars. Obviously, honesty of degree is of degrees, and from the degrees are that the person's inward and outward are equal, and that one wouldn't necessarily see, but there'll be indications. May Allah grant us that.
Assalamu alaikum. I was
Wa alaikum
wondering,
salam.
how do you stay consistent in your actions every day?
I'm working on it. Allah knows best. Love the consistent and keep their company. That's the best I can say. Inshallah. When you figure it out, tell me, inshallah ta'ala. We're going to close because we have a lot of guests that didn't just come for the lesson. Some of them are elders, kind of shy not to stop and greet them. So we're going to have the adhan, and then quickly after that, the iqama. To the ladies that are arriving, I'm sorry that there's a puddle in front of the door. We're working on that. Some of the construction redistributed the water a little bit in a way that needs to be amended. Ladies are welcome to come in this other door, and that's being worked on. Please forgive us any inconvenience. We're going to have Asr prayer, and then shortly after that, and please cooperate with the servers. They might have to move some chairs and some things around to set up the majlis. Then we'll begin the burda, and then after the burda, everyone is invited to dinner. Habib Hussein has already prayed Asr, Hafidhullah, so he'll be joining us after we pray Asr, I believe, and we'll begin the burda, inshallah. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad and others.